They did not fear Thor because he was violent. They feared him because he did not need permission. For years, the sky answered when his name was spoken. Storms bent to his will. Armies froze mid-march. Enemies capable of erasing cities simply chose not to try. Thor never ruled Earth. He never demanded loyalty. He arrived when destruction seemed certain and vanished before gratitude could harden into worship. To many, he was a hero. To some, a god. To the world's leaders, he was something far more unsettling. A force that could not be commanded. The question did not begin as anger. It began as calculation. What happens when a god chooses differently? What happens when Asgard's wars demand more than Earth's survival can afford? No one accused Thor of betrayal. Not yet. But fear never waits for evidence. It moves ahead of truth. Behind sealed doors, quiet councils replaced celebration. Analysis replaced faith. Every simulation ran to the same conclusion. If Thor ever turned away, Earth would stand alone. And alone, Earth would break. So they made a decision dressed in reason, wrapped in caution, justified by necessity. They called it partnership. They called it mission. One built in shadow. One only a god could complete. Thor accepted without pause. Because faith had always been his blind spot. And because he still believed the people he defended would never see him as something requiring containment. That belief was about to shatter. The moment he raised his hammer to answer their summons, the fate of gods and mortals began its silent, irreversible turn. For a long time, Earth believed the storms were under control. Thunder no longer meant fear. Lightning no longer meant disaster. When dark clouds gathered too quickly, when oceans rose higher than they should, people looked to the sky and felt calm instead of panic. Thor had been there before. He would be there again. He always was. Cities remembered the sound of his hammer before they remembered the damage. A single strike in the sky could stop an invasion before alarms finished ringing. Entire fleets turned back the moment thunder answered their advance. Thor never stayed to watch the celebration. He never stood before cameras. He solved the problem, then vanished into the clouds like the storm itself moving on. That was why people trusted him. He did not act like a king. He did not speak like a god. He laughed with children, listened to soldiers, and drank with farmers when no one was watching. To the world, Thor was not a ruler. He was a shield. And shields are easy to trust when they never ask who is being protected. But trust changes when it lasts too long. Over time, something else grew alongside safety: dependence. Every disaster that ended early taught the world the same quiet lesson. Someone else will handle it. Someone stronger. Someone faster. Someone who does not fail. Thor never noticed when the cheering softened. He did not hear the questions forming beneath the praise. He was too busy answering cries for help that never stopped coming. From broken satellites, to alien threats, to storms born from fractured climates, the work never ended. And he never said no. That was the first mistake. Because power that never rests becomes power people begin to measure. The questions did not come from the streets. They came from quiet rooms. From leaders who stared at screens filled with data instead of skies filled with thunder. What happens if Thor is not available? What happens if Asgard calls him home during an Earth crisis? What happens if he chooses one world over another? No one accused him of planning harm. Fear does not need accusations. It needs possibilities. Military experts ran simulations they never intended to release. In every scenario, Thor was placed not as a defender, but as an unknown variable. A god with his own loyalties. A warrior shaped by another world's values. The results were always identical. Earth could not stop him. Not with weapons. Not with armies. Not with alliances. And what frightened them most was not his strength. It was his freedom. Thor answered to no government. He followed no human law. When he acted, it was because he believed it was right. And belief, they realized, could change. So they did what humans always do when faced with something they cannot defeat. They tried to control the narrative. public praise slowly shifted into careful language. Words like coordination and oversight replaced gratitude. Commentators spoke about balance. Officials spoke about responsibility. The idea spread quietly, deliberately. Thor should not act alone. Thor should not decide alone. Thor heard none of it. When the message arrived, it sounded simple. A request for assistance. A mission requiring discretion. A growing threat far from Earth that could destabilize multiple realms. The kind of danger Thor had faced his entire life. He did not question it. He never had before. He left without ceremony. No farewell. No warning. Just the familiar crack of thunder as he crossed the sky. To him, it was another duty. To the world, it was the moment everything changed. The meeting place was not on Earth. That should have been the first sign. Neutral ground, they claimed. A location designed for safety. Thor arrived alone, hammer in hand, calm as ever. The space around him felt wrong immediately. Too quiet, too controlled. He noticed the symbols carved into the walls. Old magic, strong magic, not meant to welcome gods, but to contain them. Thor smiled anyway. He spoke first, warm and open, asking what threat required such secrecy. The answers came carefully, vague, focused on process instead of danger. As they spoke, the air shifted, heavy, pressing. His grip on Mjolnir tightened as something unseen wrapped around his strength. For the first time in centuries, thunder did not answer him. The spell was ancient, older than Asgard's pride. Magic designed not to kill gods, but to humble them. Thor felt his power slip away, not violently, but gently, like water draining from a cracked vessel. His breath grew heavier. His muscles slowed. The room stayed silent. No one met his eyes. Chains formed from light and runes snapped around his arms. Mjolnir fell from his hand and struck the floor with a sound that echoed far too long. Thor tried to call it back. Nothing happened. That was when he understood. This was never a mission. It was a decision. They spoke then about safety, about balance, about how this was necessary. Thor listened without anger, without shouting. He did not struggle. That confused them more than resistance ever could. "You could have asked," he said quietly. "We did," someone answered. This was the answer. The transport was ready before he finished speaking. A vessel designed not to carry a god, but to remove one. As it sealed around him, Thor looked once more at the faces watching him fall. He searched for fear. He found relief. As the ship vanished into the void, thunder did not follow. Earth felt quieter that day, too quiet. And somewhere far beyond the stars, a god began to fall toward a fate no one had bothered to explain. Thor woke to pain, not the sharp kind that fades quickly, but the deep, heavy kind that settles into bone and refuses to leave. His body felt wrong, heavy, slow. Every breath took effort. The air burned his lungs as if it did not want him there. When he tried to move, the ground pulled him down harder than any battlefield he had ever known. The red sky told him everything he needed to know. This was not Earth. This was not Asgard. The light above was wrong, draining instead of giving, pressing against him like a weight. Thor pushed himself up on one knee and nearly collapsed again. His strength was gone, not sealed, not blocked, gone, as if it had never belonged to him at all. He reached for Mjolnir. It did not answer. For the first time since he was a child learning to lift a hammer too heavy for mortal hands, Thor felt small, not humbled, not challenged, reduced. The world around him moved. The ground was cracked and alive with heat. The air carried distant roars that did not sound natural or mindless. These sounds carried intent, hunger sharpened by intelligence. Thor stood anyway, because standing was all he had left. The first creature found him quickly. It emerged from behind a ridge of jagged stone, massive and low to the ground. Its hide layered like armor forged by nature itself. Its eyes locked onto him with recognition. Not curiosity, recognition. Thor understood in that moment that this place was not merely hostile. It was designed. The beast charged. Thor rolled aside on instinct, the impact cracking the ground where he had stood. On Earth, he would have ended the fight in a breath. Here, he barely avoided being crushed. He grabbed a shard of broken rock and drove it into the creature's neck with all the strength he had left. It screamed and pulled back, bleeding thick black liquid onto the red ground. Thor did not chase it. He did not feel victorious. He felt tired. That was when the others appeared. Figures emerged from the rocks and shadows. Different shapes, different sizes. Some wore armor crafted from scraps of metal and bone. Some carried weapons that looked barely functional. All of them watched Thor the same way. Not as prey, not as a god, as a test. They spoke in broken language, enough for meaning. Where did you fall from? Why are you alive? Thor answered simply, because I am hard to kill. That earned him nothing but silence. They took him with them, not with kindness, not with cruelty, with caution. Their settlement was hidden deep within a canyon carved by centuries of violence. Wreckage from crashed ships formed walls and shelters. Fires burned low and blue, giving light without heat. Survival without comfort. Thor learned quickly. This world was a dumping ground, a place where the universe sent what it could not control. Warlords, assassins, weapons that learned too much, heroes who frightened the wrong people. On this planet, strength ruled everything. Mercy was weakness. Killing was currency. Thor did not fit. When fights broke out over food, he stepped between them. When raids came at night, he stood at the front. He did not kill unless forced. Even then, he avoided it. That confused them. On this world, refusal to kill meant death. Yet he kept standing. Days turned into weeks. His body adapted slowly. Muscles hardened. Reflexes sharpened. Pain became routine. Hunger became background noise. The hammer was still gone. The thunder still silent. But something else began to change. The people watched him. When he was injured, he did not complain. When he lost, he learned. When others fell, he lifted them. He did not claim leadership. He did not demand loyalty. He simply acted. Story spread. A god without power. A warrior who would not kill. A fool who stood in front of danger instead of behind it. And then the attacks changed. Creatures came in groups now. Smarter. Coordinated. Someone was watching. Someone did not like what Thor was becoming. The hunters arrived at dawn. Ships cut through the red sky and landed beyond the canyon. These were not beasts. These were trained killers. They moved with purpose, driving survivors together, forcing choices. Fight and die. Run and lose others. Thor chose neither. He stood where the canyon narrowed and became a wall. He took the first blow and the second. Bone cracked. Blood flowed. He did not fall. The survivors watched as he stayed on his feet through pure refusal. That was when they joined him, not because they believed in gods, because they believed in standing together. The battle was chaos. Blades against bone. Fire against stone. Thor moved like a shield, not a weapon. Blocking, pushing, enduring. By the time the hunters pulled back, the canyon was quiet again. Thor collapsed. They thought he was dead, but he breathed. They carried him deeper into the canyon, away from the sky. For days, he drifted in and out of darkness. Fever burned. Dreams came, not of Asgard, not of glory, of responsibility. When he woke, something felt different. Not strength, resolve. Above them, far beyond the red clouds, a ruler watched the feeds in silence. A god brought low, a symbol forming where none should exist. That was unacceptable, and the order was given. Break him. Pain became routine. Thor woke each day, already tired, already hurting. His body carried marks that never fully healed before new ones replaced them. Cuts burned, bruises darkened. His shoulders felt heavier under the planet's crushing gravity. The red sun never rested. It watched him constantly, draining what little strength he rebuilt overnight. Still, he stood. The settlement changed because of that. Fights that once ended in death now ended with broken weapons and angry stares. People who had survived alone for years began to move in pairs, then groups. Food was shared carefully instead of stolen violently. No one announced these changes. They simply happened around Thor, like water flowing around stone. Not everyone approved. Whispers followed him through the canyon. Some called him weak. Others said he was pretending, waiting to regain his power before ruling them like every other tyrant who had ever risen on this world. On this planet, hope was dangerous. It made people careless. It made them trust. Thor understood that fear. He did not argue. He did not defend himself with words. He answered doubt the only way this world respected, by showing up. When raids hit the outer shelters, he was there. When hunters targeted the injured, he stood between them. When disputes turned violent, he took the first blow and refused to return it with killing force. His body became a shield marked with scars. The chains still hanging from his wrists became tools. He learned their weight, their reach. He used them to pull enemies off balance, to disarm instead of destroy. Each movement cost him pain. Each fight cost him blood. And still, the story spread. There was a man under the red sun who refused to become a monster. The ruler of the planet heard those stories. The tyrant had ruled this world for centuries. He had seen legends rise and fall. Strength meant nothing to him. He broke the strong easily. What unsettled him was influence. What worried him was example. This was not rebellion yet. It was worse. The traps came next. Paths Thor used began to collapse without warning. Hunting zones filled with beasts trained to sense him specifically. Snipers fired from impossible distances, not to kill him, but to wound the people near him. The message was clear. Choose your mercy, or choose their lives. Thor chose every time. He walked into the traps. He drew the danger toward himself. His body became a map of suffering. A burn along his arm where red energy tore through flesh. A shoulder shattered by a heavy blow that he reset himself with clenched teeth and no sound. He never asked for help. That frightened them more than anger ever could. One night, the red sun dimmed slightly. Just for a moment, the air felt different. Charged. Thor felt it too. Not power returning. Something shifting. A reminder. He ignored it. The attack came at dawn. The tyrant's champions descended on the canyon. Not hunters. Not beasts. Warriors bred for one purpose. To kill legends. They moved with brutal precision, tearing through defenses, shattering walls, silencing fires. Thor ran toward the sound. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Chain swinging, body moving on instinct. He blocked strikes meant for others, took wounds that should have ended him. His arm broke under the weight of a blow. He screamed. He stayed upright. The champions hesitated. They had never seen prey refuse to fall. That hesitation was enough. The settlements surged forward together. Not trained fighters, not warriors. People protecting something they believed in. Overwhelmed, the champions retreated, dragging their wounded away. The canyon fell silent. Thor collapsed. They thought he was dead. They gathered around him quietly. No cheers, no victory cries, just fear. Then he breathed, weak, shallow, alive. They carried him into the deepest chamber of the canyon. Fever took him. His body fought itself. Time blurred. Voices faded. And then the light changed. Blue. Just for a second. Thor's eyes opened. Strength rushed through him like a memory trying to wake. Not enough to summon thunder. Not enough to lift mountains. Enough to heal. Enough to survive. Enough to stand again. When he woke fully, the settlement stared at him like he had returned from death itself. You should have broken, someone whispered. Thor sat up slowly, pain still heavy in his limbs. Maybe, he said, but I did not. That night, he spoke to them. Not as a god, not as a king, as a man. He did not promise escape. He did not promise victory. He did not ask them to fight. He told them the truth. This planet feeds on fear. If we keep giving it fear, it will never stop. Silence followed. Then one by one, they stepped forward. Not warriors, believers. High above, in a fortress built from the remains of broken ships and fallen legends, the tyrant watched the feeds in growing fury. The red sun's fluctuation had not gone unnoticed. "He is adapting," the tyrant snarled. "No," his advisor replied quietly. "He is inspiring." The tyrant crushed the console beneath his hand. "Prepare the arena," he ordered. "If he wants to be a symbol, we will make an example." Deep beneath the planet's surface, ancient machines began to wake. Metal screamed. Bone shifted. A structure older than the prison itself started to rise. The arena of judgment. Thor stood beneath the red sky, feeling the faint pulse in his veins. He knew what was coming, and for the first time since Earth betrayed him, he smiled. The ground trembled long before the arena came into view. Metal and stone rose from beneath the planet's surface like a wound reopening. Towers formed around a wide circular pit, each packed with watchers drawn by one promise. Only one would leave alive. The red sun hung above it all, dimmer than before, flickering as if the sky itself was uncertain. Thor stepped onto the cracked stone floor without armor, without a weapon. The chains still wrapped around his wrist dragged behind him, scraping across the ground. The noise echoed through the arena and then stopped. Silence followed. The tyrant appeared above, seated on a throne built from shattered ships and broken champions. Massive, armored, ancient. His presence alone bent the air. His voice rolled across the arena like thunder that did not belong to Thor. "You have disrupted the order of this world." Thor looked up calmly. This world was never ordered. It was only afraid. Laughter erupted from the stands. The tyrant's eyes narrowed. "You will fight," he declared. "You will kill. Or everyone who follows you will die screaming." The first gate opened. The challenger charged, all muscle and rage, skin reinforced with red sun technology. The impact rattled the arena walls. Thor moved carefully, every step chosen. He dodged instead of striking, redirected instead of breaking. When the creature fell unconscious instead of dead, the crowd roared in anger. The red sun dimmed slightly. The second challenger was faster, smarter. Blades tore through flesh. Blood stained the stone beneath Thor's feet. He fell once, then again. He stood each time. When this challenger also collapsed, breathing but alive, confusion spread through the stands. Mercy did not belong here. Between fights, Thor dropped to one knee. His breath came heavy. The faint pulse in his veins grew stronger. Not power, resistance. Hope had weight, and it was pressing back. The final gate opened. The tyrant descended into the arena. The crowd fell silent. This was no test. This was execution. The tyrant moved like a mountain. Every strike cracked the ground. Thor was thrown across the arena, smashing into a pillar that shattered on impact. He struggled to his feet, vision blurring. "Look at you," the tyrant mocked. "A god reduced to blood." Thor wiped his mouth. A god would not care. They clashed again. Thor used speed he did not know he still possessed. Training, memory, instinct. Every movement was survival. The tyrant laughed as he landed a crushing blow to Thor's chest. Bone cracked. Thor gasped. The world narrowed. Then the sky flickered. Blue light spilled through the cracks in the red clouds. The crowd gasped. Thor felt it surge through him like breath after drowning. Wounds closed. Muscles strengthened. Not full power. Enough. He stood. The tyrant's laughter died. They fought again. This time the ground broke beneath them. Thor matched the tyrant blow for blow, refusing to kill even now. Rage met restraint. Power met choice. "You think mercy makes you strong," the tyrant roared. "No," Thor said, gripping his arm. "Choice does." With a final effort, Thor slammed the tyrant into the arena floor, pinning him beneath shattered stone. The arena shook. Thor released his grip and stepped back. Alive, defeated, spared. The stands erupted, not in cheers, but in confusion. The planet did not know how to respond to mercy. Above them, the red sun cracked. Ancient machines groaned as systems failed. energy tore through the tyrant's armor as he screamed in fury and disbelief. The world was breaking. Thor looked up and understood. This was not victory. This was responsibility. He turned and ran, flying, for the first time since Earth. Prisoners stared as he tore through the control spire, ripping out the core that powered the red sun. Light exploded outward. True light. The sky shifted. The crushing pressure faded. Thor fell to one knee, drained but smiling. The chains fell from his wrists. The arena collapsed behind him. The prison was broken. Hope stood where fear once ruled. And far across the stars, Earth was about to feel it. The planet did not die. That surprised everyone. The red sun faded into a dull ember as the ancient machines shut down one by one. Gravity softened. The air cleared. Creatures that had hunted for centuries froze in confusion, no longer driven by the constant pressure to kill or be killed. For the first time in its violent history, this world was quiet. Thor stood at the highest point of the broken spire. His body was exhausted. His armor was gone. His hammer rested at his side again, heavier with meaning than power. Below him stood thousands. Warlords, survivors, monsters, prisoners the universe had decided were easier to discard than understand. They waited, not for orders, for direction. Thor did not raise his voice. He did not claim the moment. This world does not need another ruler, he said calmly. It needs a chance to choose something different. His words carried because they were not commands. They were an offer. He turned away from them and walked toward a ship torn from the tyrant's fleet. A vessel built for control, now repurposed for freedom. He did not look back when it lifted into the sky. Across the stars, Earth noticed immediately. Satellites tracked his approach. Emergency systems activated. Weapons armed, but did not fire. Leaders argued. Some demanded defense. Others demanded apology. Fear returned quickly when old protection came back into view. Thor did not slow down. He entered the atmosphere in silence and landed in the center of a United Nations plaza. No thunder, no display, just a man standing where the world could see him. Soldiers raised weapons with shaking hands. Cameras hovered. Crowds held their breath. Thor looked at them and felt something unexpected. Not anger, disappointment. You were afraid, he said. I understand that. Murmurs rippled through the plaza. But fear is not an excuse for betrayal. A representative stepped forward, voice unsteady. You could destroy us. Thor nodded. I could have. I still can. The silence was heavy. But I will not. He told them everything. The prison, the planet, the tyrant, the mercy he chose when killing would have been easier. The people he left behind now free to decide who they wanted to become. And now he said, I have a choice too. The world waited. I will not be your weapon. I will not be your God. And I will not ask permission to do what is right. He stepped back. If you need me, I will come. If you fear me, I will keep my distance. He rose into the sky. No cheers followed. No applause. Only silence. Days passed. Disasters happened. An earthquake split the ocean floor. A reactor failed. A storm threatened millions. Thor did not appear. People waited. Then they moved. Rescue teams acted faster. Nations shared resources. Ordinary people saved strangers. Not because a god would fix it, because they had to. And when hope began to fail, Thor arrived. Not above them, with them. Months later, the world felt different. Stronger, less dependent. Thor no longer hovered like a symbol in the sky. He walked streets. He listened. He helped when asked and when needed. Not because he was feared, because he was trusted. High above Earth, a quiet mark burned faintly in the atmosphere where a god had once been taken away. Not a warning, a reminder. A god was sent away. A monster was expected, but a hero chose to return.